Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode 125. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. With more than 190 years of combined experience, the leaders of this company has raised more than $750 million for clients throughout the world. Dwayne Ashley is founder and CEO of Bridge Philanthropic Consulting, also known as BPC, the nation's only full-service Black and women-owned fundraising firm. Welcome, Dwayne.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It is our pleasure. Listen, I was doing some research on you, and you have a pretty amazing bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like us to know about you and your company?
Well, thank you so much for hosting us, Dr. Richard. I've been in the fundraising and philanthropic sector for more than 30 years. I've worked for organizations like the United Way, the United Negro College Fund, 100 Black Men of America. I ran a celebrity foundation, which was founded by Madonna. And then I joined Jazz at Lincoln Center, and I ran the Thurgood Marshall Fund for 10 years. So most of my work has been in social justice and education, with the commitment to protecting institutions that really build communities of color and protect communities of color's art form, and also help people to be able to succeed and become the best persons that they can be in this world. I am passionate about this field. In 2016, after I finished up a 5-year tenure at Jazz at Lincoln Center, I went there to raise an endowment for the organization because at the time they had a $10 million endowment and the organization was at great risk. So the board really wanted someone to come in and run an endowment campaign, to build the annual campaign, so that if we ever went through another downturn like in 2008, the organization would have the stability to sustain itself. We raised the endowment in 1 year. It was historic because it was the largest endowment campaign that had ever been done for jazz. And it came from donors all across the country, but people who were passionate about preserving that art form. After finishing that up, I decided it was really time for me to really start my own firm. Part of the catalyst for that was when the African American History and Culture Museum was built in Washington, D.C., I learned that they had hired a firm to do the fundraising that was not a firm of color. And that really grabbed my attention, but it was not because they didn't intend to do that. They, carved out an RFP, issued it. No firms of color responded to run a campaign of that size because they didn't exist. They did hire some consultants who were minorities to work on pieces of it, but the primary firm driving it was a non-firm of color. And that really, motivated me and inspired me and became a catalyst for me to say we need to be represented in this sector. It's a $1.3 trillion sector. There's more than 1 million nonprofits that are registered with the IRS in the United States. And at the time, we did not have a full-service firm of color that could run major capital campaigns and annual campaigns for organizations of color. So I gathered a few trusted and experienced friends, and that became the genesis of Bridge Philanthropic Consulting. Almost 3 years later, we have $250 million worth of campaigns that we're running right now. We represent everyone from the August Wilson House to Harlem Hospital to the Hispanic Federation to the Black Civic Voter Participation, 100 Black Men of New York, 100 Black Men of America. I mean, you name it, we represent our community. And we bring an expertise to our work to really give our communities the best advice, the best guidance, the best counsel, and the best fundraising experience to really help them drive incremental results. We know that much of the capacity that does not exist in our institutions dates back to a shameful part of this country's history where we have always had economic disparities. And that certainly plays out in the nonprofit sector as it relates to communities of color.
Talk about your ideal client.
Well, we have a number of, when we think about our client profile, because we have multiple products to service our clients. But I will tell you that when you think about what is BPC's, client profile, it is an organization that serves communities of color. They have at least 3 to 5 years of fundraising experience where they have been operating as an organization, and that would be for our primary consulting product. They have an active board of directors, and they have been stewarding their donors and are ready to look at how do they drive growth and increasing their fundraising. That would be the ideal client for our general consulting business. However, I want to pivot on that because there are also social entrepreneurs who have a great vision to create something in their community and to do something to make a difference. And they may be a startup, a nonprofit person who comes to us and says, I don't really know what I'm doing. I need help in organizing my organization, setting it up the right way, making sure I have all of my compliances in place. We would work with them with our one-day consulting product. We would not go in and put a team in to say that we're going to run a major campaign for them because they're not institutionally ready for that. But we do work with them also. We also work with smaller organizations who may not have a development department at all, but they've been operating and raising money and making a difference in their community. And they now need an institution to come in and help them organize, build their capacity, be able to develop their case for support, and be stronger when they go back out to the community to present themselves so that they can raise even more money, and they also can present themselves in a way that they can be more attractive to foundations, individuals, and corporations who would make investments in their organization.
Dwayne, you talked about this economic disparity in our communities. Can you elaborate on that more in terms of what can we do to eradicate that? That is really like the mission of my podcast. It's about there's so many gaps and disparity in our community when you talk about economics, jobs, technology, education. It's just so many gaps. And I like that you're being the solution to the disparity. So that's what I endeavor to do, is to eradicate the wealth gap in our communities. So why don't you share with us about, just talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I think part of that is, and thank you so much for being dedicated to, really, putting a spotlight on entrepreneurship and what entrepreneurs are doing. And because that certainly is one of the ways that we start to eradicate it, is really educating our children, helping them to understand when they're growing up that they don't just have to take a job, but they can create their own business and drive wealth and create their own destiny. So I think educating more of our community about entrepreneurship and the power that goes with entrepreneurship for economic empowerment and wealth building. In addition to that, as a part of that, you also have to educate the community about the importance of philanthropy. We have always given back to our churches, to our families, but I'm talking about the next level of philanthropy. Being engaged in philanthropy and nonprofit work in your community where you know that it is going to make a difference in building the capacity of that community to sustain itself, building the leadership of that community, giving young men and women an opportunity to be able to complete school, go to college or trade school or whatever type of next level of training and development and skill development that they want to get to be able to go and pursue their passions. We have to have it not only in terms of entrepreneurship and building wealth, but it also has to be about building the institutions in our communities, like our churches, but also community-based organizations that do mentoring like 100 Black Men, like our fraternities and sororities. And that means giving back, giving of your time, but also digging a little deeper and be willing to make a philanthropic investment in those organizations. That could be a monthly contribution, that could be an annual contribution. And then the next level of that becomes keeping them in your will. Planned giving is something that a lot of our community does not know about. And that is where you designate a charity in your will, as we know that people want to pass on wealth to their families, but you also can help to build institutions in your community as a part of that legacy by giving them a planned gift that will help to build and sustain their capacity.
What problem exists in the world today that you would like to solve, Dwayne?
I'm really looking at how we address the absence of minorities in fundraising. And specifically, I mean experienced fundraisers who know how to solicit major individual gifts, who know and understand how to steward foundation gifts, corporate gifts, because a lot of minority organizations, we tend to focus on sponsorships for events and government fundraising. And those are all good and they should be a part of your comprehensive strategy. But when you look at where philanthropy is given from and where organizations who do it well are securing their gifts from, it comes from individuals. Last year, when you look at the fact that almost $500 billion was given away, 85% of that came from individuals. And when you look at the revenue drivers for minority organizations, and you look at the footprint of where their revenue comes from most, and I would say 90%, individuals is the smallest sector of their revenue. And it tends to be more foundations, government, sponsorships, and events driven. And we need to turn that tide to where individuals becomes the larger portion of the revenue, because that is where you're going to get the most growth in philanthropy. So my goal is to educate our community about that through providing consulting with experienced fundraisers who go in and help them build a plan for building their individual and major gift donor base so that they can really grow and drive their incremental revenue to another level. And we want to be able to do that, for our organizations in our community. That's who we serve, and that's the problem that we want to solve.
Someone is listening, and how do they gain that experience when you talk about the absence of minorities in this industry, in fundraising? How should someone go about gaining that experience and getting the education to get into this field?
Well, there are a number of fundraising programs in the country, and I'll highlight one that I'm very familiar with because I've spent a lot of time with them, and that's the Indiana School of Fundraising at IU, Indiana University. And so that is one of the most stellar programs in the country. There are a number of them around the country. At Columbia University, NYU has one. I know that Harvard has a new, they've always had a public affairs program, but they also have a nonprofit innovation program. The University of Pennsylvania has one that's called the Fell School of Government and Nonprofit. That's where I received my master's from. So there are a number of programs that specialize in training people to be fundraising professionals. There is also the Association of Fundraising Professionals, which I am a longtime member and have served on the board in Philadelphia and also in New York. And they are the trade association for professional fundraisers. They offer webinars, a number of programs that you can be introduced to how to fundraise, from Fundraising 101, how to engage donors. But it also has a lot to do with your passion. Do you have a passion for working with people? Do you have a passion for building relationships? Because at the end of the day, I tell people this all the time, people give to people. And you can have the best mission in the world, you can have the most compelling organization, but if you lack that ability to build relationships and connect with people and be authentic about what you're doing, the transaction's not going to happen. And so at the end of the day, people who want to get into this need to have a love and a passion for working with people, and also the confidence in being able to make an ask. And everyone doesn't have to be the solicitor, and I say this all the time. You can be the opener in the relationship, you can be the stewardship and cultivation person, and you can be the closer, and that is the person who actually makes the solicitation. So there are a number of roles for people to play. There's also a person that's called a prospect researcher. You can be the person that does all the research, looks at all the wealth indicators, understands the grant-making history, and does all the research to prepare the solicitation team to go in and make the ask. So there are a number of roles that people can play in the philanthropic sector, but those are some of the ways that they can learn and gain more knowledge about it. But one of the other areas that's more tried and true also is to just simply volunteer for an organization. Go there and learn about it. Become a volunteer and get involved in their programs. And I know a lot of people who have taken a volunteer experience and really translated that into a career with the organization. And because organizations look to people who they know well, who they know are passionate about their mission, and what better way to find talent than to look to your volunteer pool.
Dwayne, you talked about the education. Did you go to school specifically for fundraising?
I did not. My degree was actually in business with a minor in hotel and restaurant management. And I did get involved in fundraising in college. I attended a United Negro College Fund institution, received a scholarship to attend, and UNCF had a program that was called the National Pre-Alumni Council. And this was a program where the institutions got the students involved in the annual fundraising campaign. So each institution had a goal that was a student assigned goal. We had a group of officers on the campus, president, vice president, and we operated what was called the Miss UNCF pageant. So each school had a pageant. You crowned the young lady who raised the most money, and that was how the schools generated their portion to the national campaign. And when I was in college, that campaign was raising about $700,000 a year. I was elected as the National Pre-Alumni Council president, where I served as the national president and working with all the 45 institutions at that time. And that's when I really learned about fundraising, asking other students. We went and we asked small businesses, and we trained the students around the country how to fundraise. At the time, I didn't really know it was a profession that I would someday do. It was something I was engaged in college because I love my institution. I love UNCF. I wanted to help the organization. I made a lot of great contacts and built a lot of great relationships with students all across the country at UNCF schools. And so that was how I first got introduced to it. I later then, after I graduated, a friend of my family's introduced me to an opportunity at the United Way, where my mentor, Sylvia Brooks, who at the time was the vice president there, interviewed me, and I ultimately got the job at the United Way, and that was where I learned my first experience of fundraising. When I graduated, I actually wanted to go to work for UNCF, and they would not hire me because I didn't have experience. They said, "No, Dwayne, we like you a lot, we know you, but you don't have any experience." So my goal all along was to go and get the experience at United Way and then to join the United Negro College Fund, which I ultimately did 2 years later.
Tell us what you are most grateful for right now in your life.
I'm grateful for my family. I come from a very loving family who has been very supportive of my goals and my passion throughout my life. I am also grateful for the opportunity to be able to do what I do every day, and that is to work in my passion, helping organizations that I love and that I care about, because my clients are not just business transactions. I'm vested in their mission, I'm vested in their success, and I'm vested in really making a difference in helping them to raise more money. So every day I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for, to have a supportive community, and to be able to have this opportunity to build this business and to make a legacy.
Speaking of legacy, what is the legacy for your business?
The legacy for my business is one that we opened the doorway. We are a disruptor. We are the first, and we are disrupting the industry, because now organizations of color don't have to turn to the majority firms when they look for a fundraising firm to work with them on their campaigns. They now have an option of working with an organization who brings a cultural sensitivity, that has one of the most diverse fundraising staffs of any full-service fundraising firm in the country, and that brings the level of experience and expertise and the ability to drive success in terms of fundraising growth to meet the goals.
Talk to a younger you, Dwayne. What advice would you give to a younger Dwayne?
Don't wait so long to take the risk. Don't be afraid, because the biggest fear is losing that paycheck that you get every 2 weeks. Am I going to be able to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to survive? But know that when you're good at something, you believe in your talents and your strengths and do it, because if you can raise the money for another institution, you can also build it in your own company and be successful. So that's what I would say to any person. If you have a passion, you have something you want to do, develop your plan and go for it, and don't be afraid to take the risk, because you will be successful, especially if you're passionate about what you want to do.
Talk about that moment in business, about that transition, Dwayne. How did you make that transition from working for someone to becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I had prepared in terms of, I knew, and I've been talking about this for a number of years, I wanted to do it. So I'd always been investing in other areas, real estate. My dad and I had a small real estate company where, we owned up to 50 properties at one point. So I was always, dabbling with entrepreneurship, but never full time. And when I made the decision, I knew that there were 2 or 3 clients that I would be able to bring on right away. So I would have some income that would be driving the business. But I also built my business model on one where I brought in partners because I knew I needed a lawyer. I knew I needed an HR person. I knew I was going to need an accountant. We were going to need a technology person. We were going to need more fundraisers who would be out bringing in business. So I recruited people to come into the company and offered them equity because, when you're starting out, you don't have a lot of cash. You want to make sure you get the talent with, expending the least amount of cash so that you can get the business up and running. So I really recruited a team of experts to join me who believed in what my vision was and what we wanted to do. And they came on board and really rounded out the other expertise and competencies that I needed to run the business. Because I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And I respect people who are good at those other areas. And so that was how I really made the transition. So when we started, we had a full team in place and we knew we were ready to really go.
Who are your top two influencers in your life and what lessons do they teach you?
Sylvia Brooks, who later became the president of the Urban League in Houston, has been a huge influence in my life. She has guided me throughout my career with sound advice on relationship management, on always, being a person in the sector who managed your brand and was very careful with how that brand was managed and making sure that you always upheld your integrity. I would also say, my parents, both of them, my mother was an entrepreneur, so she really set an example for me in starting her business, when she was a single mom at the time because my parents had divorced. She was always dabbling with real estate, which I also did, but she ran a jazz club in Houston. And after that business closed, she founded a home healthcare agency that she ran for 30 years. So she really gave me that example, being able to take the risk and believe it in yourself. And it's so interesting that now when we talk about my life as an entrepreneur, she would tell me, there were times I always got paid last. I had to pay my staff. She's been a huge influence on me, especially in terms of, teaching me and my brothers to be men of integrity and to always make sure that you treat people right and you bring a sense of loyalty to your staff and your team that is committed to helping you to drive your vision.
Talk about work-life effectiveness and how do you make it happen in your business?
Well, the great thing about owning your own business is you control your time. My business is one, like I said, that I have a lot of fun in. I love the work. We continue to grow and, get a lot of people calling us, to be engaged with our firm. But I also know the importance to having a spiritual balance. And for me, that spiritual balance is taking care of myself spiritually, making sure that I take care of my health, because I know the health disparities that exist with entrepreneurs, but also being an African-American man, that I'm predisposed to heart disease and diabetes and all the other things that we know that impact our community. And so I spend a lot of time eating right, going to the gym, making sure I take that, maintain that balance, because if you don't maintain that balance, then you're not going to be healthy for your company. I also, recently completed the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. And what they required you to do was to really check out of your business on Fridays when we had class. And it was a pretty big commitment for me, being a startup CEO, to be able to step out of my business, for 6 months and commit to every Friday not being available to run the business. But that was all about getting us to understand that you need to have a day that you step away from the business to take care of yourself. And what I've done is, and this is what they advise, is you incorporate that into, how you operate your business. So, I don't do it every Friday, but at least 2 Fridays a month, in addition to my scheduled vacations, I step away to be able to take care of myself, but also to be able to look at the business from a different lens, and stepping away, and also giving my team an opportunity to lead and sending a message to them that I trust them. I know they can do it, can run the business. I don't always have to be available, because as you build your business, you want to make sure that you're building your team so they have the confidence to run the business.
That's a wonderful value bomb that you dropped there. So thanks a million. Dwayne, we can learn from successful entrepreneurs, which is one of the reasons why we have you on the show. But why don't you tell us about a brand or a business that is dominating or that you admire and why?
I really do admire General Motors, because General Motors has always had a diversity of products that have reached diverse communities. They have always had top executives in the company that represented the communities that they serve. And I know that because I've worked with them over the years. I know people like Vivian Picard, who ran the foundation for a number of years, Roger Gillum, who was the head of corporate affairs and the chairman of the foundation and one of the highest ranking executives there. They've always been committed to walking the walk with quality products that became symbols of success in our community. And we know that, for many years and even still today, the Cadillac was a symbol of success, which is one of General Motors' products in our families. And it was a symbol of success that we saw in the faith-based community, as many of our faith-based leaders drove them. And I think that they have always symbolized access to the product, from the Chevrolet being one of the early products that many of us got when we were, getting our first cars. It was a Chevrolet Chevette. And then as we moved throughout our lives, we wanted the Camaro. And then we wanted the Corvette, which my brother got ultimately when he retired. And, so they always had products that were quality products that really spoke to all levels of the community. And I think that played out also in their community outreach. So I really admire and respect the brand for its quality, the way they market it in their commercials, but the way that they have walked the talk in their staff, and not just management staff, but the executive staff, reflecting the market that they serve and who buys their products.
What is the biggest achievement so far in your business?
The fact that we made it to year 3. As you know, most businesses fail in the first year.
Yes.
They fail in the first year. And we are definitely sustainable and will be around for a long time. We built a model that works. It's in demand, and our business is continuing to grow. So, that's a huge achievement for us that, we got it right. And our product, it's top quality. It's one of the best services, and we deliver. And people know that from our reputation.
Dwayne, I have to step back a moment, and I was thinking about what you said about General Motors, and thank you so much for bringing up that brand and the business, because I just got back from Michigan and my mom worked for General Motors, and I was talking to a young lady and just how, Detroit or Michigan known as Motor City, and just the changes that state has taken place. It's so interesting to hear you talk about a brand that has been around for many years and just walking the walk and talking the talk. And, it's interesting because my first car was Camaro. We shared the Camaro. So yeah, that was just really great. So thanks so much for bringing that up, and kudos to General Motors, because they gave this little one here, like they put food on the table, allowing my parents to work there. So thanks for that.
Yes, my mother got her Barrix Eldorado. I'll never forget it. She wanted a Barrix Eldorado. When she parked that car in the driveway, oh my God, it was so much pride for Mom. And she was so elegant when she put on her hats to go to church, and she, drove off in that car. We felt so much pride and success. So their products have always been involved in my life.
Dwayne, tell us, what can you do daily better?
Yeah. What I try to do daily better is to really look at how can I be more effective in managing my time, in making sure that I prioritize the right way, and that I'm putting out the best work as possible. So I think that I'm learning it is so important with technology today being the way it is, and we're so accessible. I read the book Deep Work, and I really do believe it's important to do deep work, and that means you have to disconnect so that when you're working on something for a client, you really can be focused and be deep in the work that you're doing. That's something that I work on doing better, and I'm trying to make sure that I turn off the cell phone, turn off the email if I'm working on something, and I really can be engaged in what I'm working on to do the best work.
What is a technology tool or technology platform that is a must-have for you in managing your business day to day?
Yeah. Well, we work on a Google platform, and we use a number of Google products. But from a technology standpoint, with the cloud system, research systems are very important to us, where we can gain data, and we subscribe to a number of them, where we're able to gain data on wealth indicators for ultra high net worth individuals, on foundations. We use one that's called the Foundation Directory. We use one that's called WealthX, and there's also another one called Wealth Potent. But those kinds of products are really important to our business, and we could not survive without having access to those kinds of sources. And project management software, of course, is extremely important.
What have you not done in life that you dream about often, Dwayne?
I dream about, which is so interesting you bring that up, and it's just actually about to come to fruition. I wanted to work with an organization that was really doing something globally to preserve the history of slavery. And we recently got a call from a museum that is dedicated to preservation of the history of slavery about us working with them. And that was a dream of mine because I think that is so important that history not be erased. I'm also working on a major project in Washington, D.C. to preserve one of the oldest Black cemeteries in the country, where the ancestors who were interned there built the White House. They built the federal buildings. And through an act of Congress, there was a segregated cemetery built next to that one that was all white. And that one is opulent and beautiful. And the Mount Zion Female Union Band Society Cemetery is one that is dilapidated and deteriorating and has not been preserved. And the opportunity to restore the cemetery is something that I've always wanted to do, because I feel like that's giving something back to the ancestors who endured so much for me to be where I am today, as a way to honor them. So working on behalf of the Slave Museum and also helping to preserve these African cemeteries is something I've always wanted to do, and very happy that I'm having the opportunity to do it.
Dwayne, where's the African Slave Museum? Where's that at? Or the Slave Museum, where's that at?
Yeah, it's in Liverpool, UK. It's in the United Kingdom, in Liverpool.
Thanks for sharing that. And you are so right. When you look at the history books that they're putting out, and I know you mentioned you came from education, and I was in, prior to my day quit, I was in higher ed. And just to see how that is exactly what they're trying to do, is erase slavery and trying to say that we came over here voluntarily. And so it's so important, and how the history books that they're writing, it's such erroneous information. So I am so glad that you're doing that amazing work. So thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
If someone wrote a book about you today, Dwayne, what is something that we would learn about you that we don't know?
You would learn about my integrity and my commitment to always being a purposeful person. Those are my two most important values, is making sure that I always operate with integrity and that I'm on purpose, because I can't do work that I don't feel is my passion and is not my purpose. And so that would come out very clearly, and that would be the themes of the book. And it's got to be done with, being authentic and that integrity, because people can smell it a mile away if, you don't have that, if you're not authentic and you don't have those kinds of values undergirding you.
And I love that, because I mentioned I did a day quit it's going on almost 2 years, and I wasn't planning to do the day quit, but I'm glad. And so that one word, when I hear being very authentic, that so resonates with me, because for my entire career, I could not be authentically me. And so that has been a kind of an epiphany for me, is living this life in a very authentic way. So I want to ask you, give us one word that would best describe Dwayne.
Yeah, one word, that it would be authentic.
Okay, thank you for that. Talk about your most memorable moment in life or business.
Most memorable moment in life was when I took my mom to South Africa, and we had an opportunity to visit Robben Island and to visit a prison where Nelson Mandela was held. It was a very transformative moment because I was sharing with my mother, who is a descendant of slaves and grew up in a small town in Louisiana and, came to Texas and made a way for her 4 boys and, gave us the opportunity to see the world. So that was a very special and important moment. And I had an opportunity to present, because at the time I was the CEO of the Thurgood Marshall Fund, to present the Thurgood Marshall Award to Nelson Mandela in South Africa. And I have a book that he gave me that he signed and wrote a note to me.
That is pretty historical. So thanks for sharing that. Let's switch gears for a moment. Talk about a moment in your business that was the most risk or that had the most trying experience, and tell us what was your takeaway from that.
Great question. I would say that, in the beginning when I started, I did start with, as I mentioned to you, several partners that I recruited. And, you put a team together, and as you get going, some people realize they're not startup people and they can't go the journey with you. And so that was a moment that I had to pivot because, my vision was that we would all be going forward together. But you do have to understand that when you get into this, that not everybody is cut the same way. And being an entrepreneur, it's a spiritual thing. You've got to believe in yourself, and you've got to be willing to take those risks and willing to step back with your income for a period of time. And that was a very difficult period because I had to make a decision that, okay, I'm willing to go this alone if I have to, and with a different group of people. And so when, you believe in your business, you have to make that decision. You just have to go forward. And that was a moment I did face that it could have gone a different way had I not been so passionate about making sure that BPC survived and continued to thrive.
If you conducted this interview, what is the one question that you would ask yourself? And I want you to answer that question, Dwayne.
You ask great questions. I would ask myself, what drives you, every day? What makes you want to do this every day when you wake up?
You're supposed to answer that.
I was wondering if you wanted me to answer it. So I would, what drives me is my community. I love my community. I love the fact that God gave me these gifts. I have these strengths that my parents honed and developed in me, and my mentors and people who have helped me along the way got me to this point, and that I can really take these gifts and make a difference in my community. And so that makes me get up every day working harder and harder and harder to do the best that I can do to support my community. And I tell you, Harlem Hospital is one of my clients. When you walk into the lobby of Harlem Hospital and you see the community, they serve our community. You see the elderly, you see the young, you see everyone coming to a place that they know they can feel safe. Who cares about them? And each time I walk in there, it reaffirms for me that I did the right thing, that I'm on the right path, and that I'm purposeful in what I'm doing, because I know that my work makes a difference in helping Harlem Hospital to deliver the great services that they deliver. And, when I work with their team there, like Ebony Carrington, who is a tremendous CEO, and, Dr. Alvin Adele, who's an anesthesiologist there, and just a tremendous person, a Harvard grad who could be at any institution in the world, but he chose to be at Harlem Hospital because he was born in Harlem and he wanted to come back and give to his community. That wakes me up and makes me want to work for them every day to do the best that I can to help them get the resources they need.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and feel free, if there's something you desire not to answer, you can say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Yes, I'm ready.
Dwayne, tell us the last movie you saw.
The last movie I saw, God, I see so many movies. I saw Bohemian Rhapsody, which was incredible.
You relax doing what?
Working out.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Michael Jackson is one of my favorite singers. My favorite rapper would be Jay-Z and Nas.
Your favorite dance song?
My favorite dance song? Beyonce, I Love Blow.
What food you eat every week no matter what?
Salad.
And your favorite month?
August.
Dwayne, before we leave, why don't you share with our audience what is the best way for our audience to connect with you to support your business? And if someone is wanting to do business with you, tell them how they can connect with you and your company.
Well, you can find us on all social media platforms on www.bridge Philanthropic Consulting or bpc.fund. And that's B as in boy, P as in promise, C as in cat, .fund.com. Because we are a corporation, so you would have to use the .com. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and also our website will give you a lot of information. You can also call our office, 646-926-4272.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. That's a wrap. We appreciate you spending part of your day on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for your leadership and all that you do.
Thank you. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.